Session 7. We're about to resume, so we'd like to ask you to please come back in. We need to close some of the side doors for the ambient sound. Just a reminder as well, if it's not up on the screen, if we can flash it again, because I do note, even though we've not been plugging it into the proceedings, that there's been a lot of activity on social media, particularly Twitter. And in fact, just a little tease, so to speak, Bevel Wooding is here with us, who is one of our eminent ICT persons in the region, not just from hardware and infrastructure standpoint, but content. And so we're going to have a little bit of not a discussion, but including that in terms of the focus that will be cross-cutting over the two sessions that we have this afternoon. So can I ask everyone, please, I don't want to have to raise my voice at the mic. Can everyone please settle back in for the afternoon session? People who may be outside, can we get back to our tables or wherever we are? Do we have all of our panelists? Okay. Great, we have been well watered and fed. And we get back into some work this afternoon in terms of advocating innovative financing solutions. And I'm going to a lot of talk about access to financing, financial institutions, fiscal policies, public-private sector partnership arrangements. So without further ado, and again encourage you to use those, to use your question feedback forms as well. Without further ado, I'd like to ask Antonio Prado, Executive Secretary of ECLAC, who's going to be our moderator, for this session, to take the baton from here.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege to serve as moderator and chairperson for this session. I bring greetings to you from our Executive Secretary, Alicia Bárcena, who would have liked to be here, but other pressing commitments prevented her from being here. Because she recognized the importance of this event, she has asked me to represent her. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this panel on advocating innovative financing solutions, which in light of the upcoming third international conference on FFD to take place in Addis Ababa in July 2015. We'll focus on the ways in which the Caribbean may benefit from both innovative domestic and international financing for development, given the emerging global, regional, and domestic financing architecture. For many Caribbean countries, their categorization as middle-income states has meant reduced access to concessional finance and a greater dependence on sources which are quite expensive. In the face of continuing challenge with debt, compounded with low growth, The Caribbean is hard-pressed to maintain current living standards and to finance programs of social protection. The Addis Ababa Conference, therefore, represents a unique opportunity to overcome the challenges faced by middle-income countries and cities, to deploy effective funding and recast the global development financing architecture to meet the transformative goals of the post-2015 development agenda. This requires a new and innovative approach, reflecting the specific needs of countries at every income level, including SIDS, while identifying how best to overcome the greatest obstacles to inclusive and sustainable development. Our panel today is intended to take a careful look at some important questions that must be answered for the benefit of the Caribbean, such as how should Caribbean states strategize to improve their access to financial resources, including efficient development assistance? What development indicators beside GDP per capita could be used to present an argument for concessional finance? How can we shift the emphasis of development organizations from the short-term delivery of results to long-term sustainable development? How can the region, through new strategies, partnerships, and options and policy options, address and overcome its current debt problems in a sustainable manner? What should be the role for regional development banks in the effort to raise domestic and international resources for sustainable development? Is the current structure of the banking system in the Caribbean adequate for financing economic transformation? We have two presenters and two discussants who will lead our effort to think outside of the box, to find those opportunities that exist for development financing for Caribbean SIDS. Each presenter will be invited to speak for no more than 15 minutes, and each discussant will have the same time limit. Then we will have a question and answer session. I ask our speakers to stick to the time allotted so that we will have an opportunity for full discussion at the end. Well, and I couldn't end my introductions without saying, despite today is the day of how to do it and not what to do it, but I feel that I have to say that ICLAC is quite engaged in a sense to build a culture of equality in our region and to look for the overcome of the culture of privilege. And we hope that in 2050 that will be a long-standing, rooted culture in our societies. Thank you very much. Now I will give the floor for the first keynote presentation on addressing financing for development issues in the Caribbean. That is Ms. Gail Hurley. Ms. Gail Hurley is a policy specialist on development finance at UNDP in New York. Her areas of expertise include international public finance, sovereign debt, and innovative sources of finance. Ms. Hurley, I invite you to make your presentation. You can come here or to take it from there, as you wish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first extend my thanks to the many organizers of this important and inspiring forum. I've learnt so much over the last few days and met so many wonderful people. I feel really honored and humbled to be asked to join such a distinguished list of speakers, so many thanks. So we're told that 2015 is a once-in-a-generation opportunity or year for international development. So why is that, and what's in it for the Caribbean? So hands in the air first. Who thinks the UN is disruptive? Oh, goodness me. Perhaps we need to improve on our communication strategy. So I'll perhaps take that recommendation back to New York. Well, as Amina Mohammed articulated so well this morning, governments are poised in September to agree on a remarkable, universal, and very disruptive new Sustainable Development Agenda, which is all about leaving no one behind. I mean, the next two slides here in front of you show just how formidable, but also, more importantly, how worthwhile this new agenda is. I hope that's inspiring in and of itself. But crucially, this isn't a top-down agenda. This wasn't adopted through or formulated through some top-down approach. To inform this new agenda, the UN carried out one of the world's largest ever surveys of people, asking them to identify what matters to you. What are your priorities? Over 7 million people voted in our survey, and over 5 million of those votes were cast by people under 30, which I think shows that young people really are interested in formulating policy, they're interested in the future, and they really want to shape it. They're also much more technologically savvy than some of us oldies. Much of the votes were cast online. But in addition to those votes, governments also collaborated and reached out to civil society organizations, to the private sector, to academia and to other actors to ask them, you know, what matters to you? What do you think we should focus on over the next 15 years? And so up in front of you here are some of the results, and they probably won't surprise you that, you know, people are interested in a good education, better healthcare, better job opportunities, and crucially also honest and responsive governments. Okay, so we have our Sustainable Development Plan. That's great. But where will the money come from? That's why we're here today. And isn't that the million-dollar question? Or perhaps that should be the billion or trillion-dollar question, or as my 6-year-old son would say, the gazillion-dollar question. I haven't quite worked out how many zeros are in a gazillion, but it sounds like quite a lot, and I think it's probably fair to say that the new Sustainable Development Agenda will be extremely expensive to fulfill. So where will the money come from? Our moderator just outlined that the third international conference on financing for development will take place in Addis Ababa in July. Heads of government will convene there to work out how exactly we're going to pay for our ambitious new development agenda. So where is the debate on financing for development? What's in it for the Caribbean? What are the opportunities presented by this process? What are the risks? What are some of the innovations emerging from the process? What are we doing at UNDP? And perhaps most importantly, as people interested in shaping the future of your region, what is your role in all of this? So where is the discussion on financing for development at the moment? First, I think it's important to point out that the new agenda is fundamentally different to the old one. Yes, on the one hand, it's about traditional development challenges, as we might conceive of them, such as continued extreme poverty, exclusion, hunger, and so on. But it's also